All right, so we're continuing to talk about the Industrial Revolution today, and we're going to be talking about like some challenges to the Industrial Revolution and people who promote the Industrial Revolution. There's no shortage of challenges. In fact, we've talked about challenges in the fact that we see all kinds of terrible labor conditions in factory work. Earlier last Friday, we saw a video on the triangle shirtwaist. I think we watched this video. If we didn't, we'll watch it today after the break. But labor conditions are terrible, and here we see that in this picture with child labor. Well, there's a guy that you should know by name. He's one of the most important men who ever lived. A guy named Adam Smith. And he's super duper 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 important that he gets his own slide. And he believed in something that we should know called laissez-faire. Now, this term laissez-faire is a really important word. And the idea of laissez-faire, we'll write down, is to, where it says what it means is to leave businesses alone. To leave businesses alone, laissez-faire. Just leave businesses alone. What this means, laissez-faire, is that the less government rules you have, the better it is. And the more rules that you have, the worse it is. You should just really let businesses do business. As an example of this, let me give you two different examples of how we run business in America in 2021. I'm going to give you three states as an example: Florida, Texas, and California. For Texas, can you go in March of 2021 inside a business during the pandemic and sit down and eat? In Texas, most of Texas, in March of 2021, can we have in-school learning? Yes. In Florida, same thing. Disney World is open. I know people who've gone to Disney World during the pandemic. And guess what? They didn't come back with the coronavirus. They had a great time. They went. It was awesome. There's restaurants, there's businesses, there's schools. But our example of California is not open. It's against the law to have an indoor meal in Los Angeles County. It is not permissible right now to open schools in Los Angeles County. And guess what? How do you think businesses are doing in the pandemic in Los Angeles County? Terrible. If you're a busboy, you don't have a job. If you're a dishwasher, you don't have a job in California. Adam Smith would say Texas and Florida have very little rules about business and the coronavirus, and that's good for business. Adam Smith would say California, you have all these rules and it's killing business. Adam Smith would say laissez-faire means you should just leave business alone. As far as the pandemic's concerned, is the death rate any different in California, Florida, and Texas? Like, they're closed. Has it saved them? Actually, California has the most deaths in the United States and the most infections in the US. Now, our rate of infection is about the same. But Adam Smith would say, you all have the same amount of people getting sick, except Texas and Florida didn't destroy their economy. What was gained by keeping your businesses shut down? You lost jobs. It didn't save you. Adam Smith would say, this is an example. Government should get out of your business and let businesses do what businesses want to do. Adam Smith, for number two, his economic philosophy is explained in his best-selling book, published in 1776. The name is on the screen. What's his book called? The Wealth of Nations. You'll write that down. It's considered by many to be one of the most important things that happened in 1776. What else happened that year? What else happened in 1776? The Declaration of it. The fact that we had a 30-second delay. Disturbing. I was writing. 1776 Declaration of Independence. At the same time that this best-selling, one of the most influential books of all time, The Wealth of Nations. Listen, Adam Smith, is often considered, it says, the father of free market capitalism. He's the father of free market capitalism. Capitalism is what gives you and me iPhones. So it gives you and me Starbucks, Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, Cane's, Dunkin' Donuts, Shipley's, H-E-B, Amazon, Netflix, YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter. None of those would exist without Adam Smith. If you like Twitter, it's only because of Adam Smith's ideas of capitalism, free market capitalism. The basic idea of free market capitalism is that people should be able to do what they want without the government getting involved. Number 4, it says on your handout, he believed in something funny called an invisible hand. If Cameron is driving, it's Cameron's hand on the wheel that's directing the car. Then that would be scary, but not shocking. Cameron's hand on the wheel is what directs the car. And Adam Smith's case, the car is like the economy, and he says the government should not put its hand on the wheel of the car because it's going to end up ruining things. Adam Smith would say California not allowing people to sit down in a restaurant and eat is ruining the economy. You need to have a hands off. But if I told Cameron, get your hand off the wheel, what are we afraid might happen if no one's hand is physically on the wheel? Yeah, we're going to crash the car. So a lot of people said, Adam Smith, I don't know about this. If there's little rules, what's to keep the car of capitalism from crashing? And Adam Smith said that's okay because he believed in something called an invisible hand. Number 4, this invisible hand, it says this: businesses and individuals should be allowed by governments to seek their own personal gain. Their own personal gain. Adam Smith said, you should be allowed to do what you want to do without the government getting in the way. Now let's say that Cameron wants to open up a business and Logan wants to open up a business. Now Cameron wants to cut corners, and he wants to make a buck. So Cameron goes to H-E-B, he goes to buy meat, and he only buys meat with the 25% off sticker because it expires today. He's like, you know what, I can make a lot of money this way. And he keeps food longer than it should. You know, we all have leftovers. He keeps leftovers maybe longer than it should. He's buying expired meat. And you know what makes it faster? If you make it all ahead of time and just microwave it when people come to your sit-down restaurant. Logan, on the other hand, says, you know what? I'm just going to buy farm fresh stuff. I'm going to actually make everything from scratch. We're not putting this in the microwave. Now, there's a TV show with Gordon Ramsay called Kitchen Nightmares. In this show, Kitchen Nightmares, these are restaurants where people are keeping bad food in the fridge. There's no health conditions. And they're like, I don't get it. Why is my business, why do people walk away? They're heating up the food in the microwave. Now, if Gordon Ramsay didn't come to those businesses, what would happen to those businesses all on their own? They would crash. They'd go out of business.
It's basically restaurant version of bars.
It's kind of like in Charles Darwin. You might remember the guy who came up with the idea of evolution. What is it called? What's it called when successful animals? What is it called?
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, there's something, Cameron, called survival of the fittest. And the strong live and the weak die. Adam Smith said that's the same thing with business. And you don't need the government to make any rules because you know what's going to happen in bad businesses all by themselves? They're going to go under. And you know what's going to happen if you are offering fresh food at good prices and good customer service? No, you're going to do well. Because there's no rule that says you have to tell people it's my pleasure to serve you. There's no rule that says we're going to have a really fast drive-through process. There's no rule that says we're going to have people out there with tablets. But who does that and their business is like booming? Chick-fil-A. All by themselves. Adam Smith says you don't need the government's hand on the wheel because there's an invisible hand. As long as you let business do what business wants to do. Letter A, it says, Adam Smith said capitalism would ultimately lead to an increase in the general welfare. In the general welfare or the general good. Everyone's going to benefit if capitalism is allowed to be. Because we're going to have all the bad restaurants go out of business. We're going to have the good ones do better. And listen, if Chick-fil-A does so well, they're going to open up what? More restaurants. And has Chick-fil-A opened up more restaurants over the years? Has Starbucks opened more locations over the years? Mod Pizza, Chipotle. These are all places that are doing well. They're opening up more and more and more. It says this, letter B, an individual, if you're allowed to do whatever you want, you would seek to run a profitable business, which in terms would, you'll write down, create jobs. If Chick-fil-A is allowed to do what they want, Chick-fil-A is going to expand from one location on Fairmont to one on Spencer to two on Spencer. They are creating jobs. Adam Smith says, leave businesses alone and they're going to create jobs. They're going to do well. They're going to thrive or they're not. And you don't need the government getting involved with a bunch of rules. Letter C says, who would want to buy obsolete products or work for a tyrant? If you have terrible food, your business is going to close. If you're the worst boss ever, what will your workers do? Quit. Who would want to do that? It says, it's actually in the self-interest of a business to be ethical. Ethics, we'll write down, leads to profits. At Chick-fil-A, when they treat you with kindness and respect, they are doing that because they know if you have a choice of going to Jack in the Box where like you're putting them out, you know, it's like I feel like I'm inconveniencing you, or you go to Chick-fil-A and you're like, you treat me better than my family treats me, you know, you might go to Chick-fil-A again.
Wait, so are you talking about one restaurant in San Antonio where they like make fun of you, did the reverse of that?
I'm saying that Chick-fil-A has chosen to do what they do because it makes money. Or think about if you're on a road trip, where do you want to stop to use the bathroom? There's no rule that says you need to have immaculate bathrooms. There's no rule that says you need to have restaurant inside. Typically, if I say gas station, before Buc-ee's became a thing, you thought a rundown, you know,
Place where you're gonna get a Buc-ee's.
Yeah, like with a single swinging light bulb in a back room with like, you know, like if you put like the light, you know, see like all the stuff, it'd be terrible, right? But now it's not just Buc-ee's. What's another gas station that's having locations that is clean and has a restaurant inside? Stripes, or they were recently purchased by 7-Eleven. There's 7-Elevens being built everywhere. There's no law that says gas stations should have a restaurant that serves Mexican food. There's no law that says you should be nice and clean and up to date. But because 7-Eleven is, they're making money, they're opening locations. Adam Smith says that's capitalism. And you could choose to still go to that like shady gas station with a single light bulb in the back bathroom, or you could choose to go to 7-Eleven. I think having it clean and nice and neat is going to make more jobs. That's what Adam Smith says. He says ethics will lead to profits all by itself. Number 4, a poorly run business will go out of business. So this quote unquote invisible hand will move the market to promote business practices without government regulation. Without government regulation. Without the burden of government having 100 different laws. Now, we might need to have some basic laws, but you don't need 100 laws, because all by itself, Kitchen Nightmares tells me bad businesses will go out of business. All by itself. Without government regulation. So Adam Smith says government should get out of the way. Letter E. There is one exception to this, though. It says on your handout that Adam Smith said government should get out of the way except to protect what? Just read your handout in front of you. Thank you. Private property is like your house. Or if you start a business, it's your business. Listen, we've talked about property before. There's a guy you should know by name named John Locke. John Locke was Thomas Jefferson's hero. And John Locke said, we are born with 3 inalienable rights. John Locke said those 3 are life, liberty, and what? Not the pursuit of happiness. That was Thomas Jefferson. Again, Thomas Jefferson had a hero. And you know what you do with your heroes sometimes? Kind of like with your homework, you copy, paste, and like slightly edit. Yeah. That's what Thomas Jefferson did. Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence said, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness are inalienable rights. He got that from someone else. He got that from John Locke, who said the 3 inalienable rights are life, liberty, and we've talked about it. We've taken notes on this. And property. That's what John Locke said. Because honestly, property rights in America are a big deal. Is it our country? Is it normal that you're going to get a knock on your door and someone's going to say, hey, Cameron, this land was actually our great-great-grandfather's land, and we're suing you and kicking you off the land unless you give me $20,000. Is that something that will ever happen in America, likely happen in America? No, that doesn't happen, but it happens all the time in other countries. Adam Smith said the government should generally stay out of the way, but you know what? I want the government to protect property rights. It says on your handout, except to protect property rights, government should stay out of economics. Government should stay out of economics. We don't want them getting involved, because when the government gets involved, they actually just get in the way. If you would get out of the way, business would thrive. Letter F. Adam Smith also thought that government should stop something. What does it say on your handout that government should stop? Mercantilism. This is a word we've talked about, and a word everyone in this room should be able to identify. Let me touch on that. Let me touch again on mercantilism. Mercantilism is when you have a mother country, like Britain or France, Spain, or the Netherlands. What makes you a mom? You have to have what to be a mom? You have to have kids. You don't have to have a husband.
Or you're going to be a single mom.
You could. You're still a mom. You have to have children, though. If England and France and Spain are mother countries, what is their children? The colonies, right? For example, Great Britain's a mother country. They have 13 children and 13 colonies. Spain is a mother country. They have children. Mexico and Guatemala and Cuba, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you should know that mercantilism is this belief. Okay, what's up? Mercantilism is this belief that you have these mother countries with colonies. We've studied this already. Listen, if you're Jamaica, you're run by the British. What are you probably growing in Jamaica? Like most Caribbean islands? Sugar. And in mercantilism, you're selling it to only one country. You're selling it just to Great Britain. You're not allowed to sell it to anyone else. You can't sell to anyone else. And guess what? When it's time to buy stuff, guess who's the only country you can buy stuff from? Take a wild guess. Your mother country. Hey.
I have $1 in my car.
That's fine.
Okay.
So listen, in mercantilism, you have to only sell to your mother country. You have to only buy from your mother country. What if France knocks on your door and says, I'll give you a better deal? Are you allowed to buy from France?
No.
No. Even if you could sell your stuff more to Spain, you're not allowed to. What is that called when one person or one country has total control of what's bought and sold? They have a what? It's also the name of a game that destroys families at 2 a.m. Monopoly. They have a monopoly. Adam Smith said, I don't think mercantilism's good because it's a monopoly. I don't think mercantilism is good because monopolies mean the government's getting in the way. And anytime the government gets involved, it usually sucks. He says, I think we need to stop this practice. It says on your handout, government should stop mercantilism. Why? They create state-run monopolies that limit trade and competition. I'm going to give you an example of a monopoly that ruins trade and competition. At Laporte, who has a total monopoly over lunch? Be very specific.
Michelle Obama.
No, Michelle Obama is not. She hasn't been in the White House for 5 years.
She ruined my money.
You're giving money to Michelle Obama in 30 minutes when the bell rings.
Oh, no.
Who has a monopoly on your lunch? The school. You have one choice of who to give money to in the cafeteria, and that's Laporte ISD. They have total control. In fact, we have a rule that we will theoretically punish you if you try to give your money to another business during lunch, right? Because we have a closed campus. Is this description, a monopoly of lunch, rules limiting your ability to freely give your money to another business, something Adam Smith would like or dislike? Dislike. Let's imagine that we followed Adam Smith's example of school lunch. What if Adam Smith said, you know what? This monopoly is not good for Laporte. It's not good for you, not good for the city. What would happen if instead of 4 lunches, we had 1 hour-long lunch? And what if on that hour-long lunch, we had open campus? And that means we have 2,000 students with money in their pockets to some degree, wanting to spend it, and an hour to leave. If that were the case, would it make sense for you if you were Jersey Mike's or Chipotle or Freebirds or Chick-fil-A or would it make sense to start one of those on Broadway right behind the stadium? There is an empty strip center with a dollar store. But if you were a business person and someone tells you, hey, did you know Laporte's open campus coming up? There's 2,000 kids, 200 teachers, and they have an hour of lunch. Would you think about opening up a Jersey Mike's or a Chipotle or a Chick-fil-A or a standalone Starbucks in Old Laporte on our side of the freeway? Yeah. So what would happen is government got out of the way. There's no more rules saying close campus. There's no more monopoly. Instead, there's competition. And now instead of an empty strip center, instead of a main street that has 3 antique shops and like 2 places to eat, you would have more businesses because 2,000 kids with money, 200 teachers with cash, and an hour to go to lunch. There's going to be more choices for you, which is good. There's going to be more jobs for people in the community, which is good. And there's going to be restaurants that are going to benefit the people who live here anyway. Because can you think of any other restaurants, fast food rather, on this side of the freeway other than McDonald's and Dairy Queen? Can you think of another on this side of the freeway, fast food? It's not on this side of the freeway.
I thought it was.
You have to go.
It used to be. Now it's an empty, abandoned building off the freeway.
The newer ones on the other side.
They closed that one, so it's farther away. There's only 2. There's a Dairy Queen and a McDonald's.
Oh, you mean off like 146?
Correct.
Okay.
On this
Yeah.
side of that freeway, of 146, there's there's 2 fast food restaurants. There's a whole strip center along the entire length of the stadium that if we had open campus, kids could walk to. Kids wouldn't need a car. I mean, it's like not much farther than junior parking lot. If we applied Adam Smith's philosophy, if we applied laissez-faire, which is get out of the way, jobs are created, choices are made.
I like that idea.
This is why Adam Smith is considered a hero for capitalism. He says, get out of the way, the general welfare will go up, jobs will happen, profits will happen, governments are actually the problem, they're not the help. This is Adam Smith. Capitalism.
I would just order my food from.
This picture shows the invisible hand. It's called invisible because it's not, he says, it's not that there's nothing driving the car, but it's not the government driving the car. If the government drives the car, it's going to crash the car. But the car's not running by itself. There's an invisible hand because, again, what kind of restaurants are going to make it? Only the good ones. Because if you are a bad restaurant serving bad food all by itself, you're going to go out of business. If you're a bad boss who treats your employees poorly, you're going to go out of business. He says a couple things. One, profit-seeking producers will make more. If you tell me LaPorte High School is open campus, I am going to now look at the fact that I have 2,000 kids that have money in their pocket. I'm going to open up a restaurant in LaPorte. I am seeking profit. I'm going to make more sandwiches, more tacos, more whatever. And guess what that's going to do? It says the needs of society are automatically met. You need food. I'm going to meet your need. The government doesn't get involved because they don't say you can't go off campus. Competition keeps quality high. If I know I'm competing for those 2,000 kids, I'm going to try to have maybe a lunch special at Jersey Mike's that I just built for LaPorte. I'm going to try to have something. Competition keeps prices low. Competition and self-interest act as an invisible hand that regulates the free market. This is what Adam Smith says. Government is not part of the solution, it's the problem. Get out of the way. Everything's going to work out on its own if you only stop making rules that don't make sense. You could apply it to LaPorte. Not everyone agrees with this. And some people say we don't need less government, we need more government. And one guy who said we need more government is this guy named Malthus. Malthus had a very different focus than Adam Smith. Malthus thought talked a lot about the dangers of population, and he said, and you'll write down, that poverty comes from overpopulation. He said poverty comes from overpopulation. Listen, if we have people in poverty, we might have to have more orphanages. If we have people in poverty, we might have to have more soup kitchens. We might have more crime. We might have a lot of problems. So you know what we probably need to do if overpopulation leads to poverty? We might want to limit how many people can have kids. Like, for example, what country famously did this? China. It was called the what? It was called the one-child policy. And what would happen if you had a second pregnancy? What could happen to you? And did some. They were forced you to have an abortion. Sometimes you were arrested and forced to have an abortion. One-child policy. The government, unlike Adam Smith says, government, get out of the way. The Chinese government said, no. We are going to actually determine how many kids you have, and we will abort your fetus if it doesn't line up with our desires. Malthus kind of agreed with that. And there's something called Malthusianism, which we'll write down, is government-run population control. Government-run population control.
What's that story about eating your children?
There's a famous story. It's called A Modest Proposal.
There we go.
Is that Jonathan Swift who wrote that? I don't remember.
I wouldn't ask me. I just remember it. We read it 2 times, and it was really funny.
It's a satire. But there's this famous story called A Modest Proposal, and this is about in Ireland. Remember, the Irish are the poorest of all white people. They're the trash of the white world in the eyes of many. And there's a lot of poor Irish people, and someone says, you know what, I have a modest proposal. I have an idea how we can solve hunger. let's take all these Irish babies and let's kill them and let's make them into food. And that way, there's no more hungry people. And that way, there's not overpopulation. We solved the problem of overpopulation. So it's actually just making fun of kind of like this ideas. But we did this in the United States all the way in the 1920s and 30s. We in the United States, if you were an ace, maybe you learned this in your programs, or you took college history, you should have learned this. Our government actually forcibly sterilized African American men and women in the 1920s and 30s. There'd be like a teenage black girl who'd go in for a doctor's visit, and they'd say, "Oh, we found something wrong with you. We need to have a procedure," and they would sterilize her. They would like tie her tubes or remove her ovaries, and they wouldn't tell her. They wouldn't get permission. And so she gets married, or he gets married, and they find out, "Man, we can't have kids. What's going on? Oh, you don't have ovaries." The government in our country forcibly sterilized Black and Hispanic students because they thought, you know what poor Black girls are going to make? More poor Black kids. You know what poor Black boys are going to make? More poor. This is the government getting involved and saying, we're going to sterilize the poor because poor will make more poor. Mathis says we don't need less government, we need more, because if the government can enforce this, society will be better. It says on your handout, there's another guy you should know, Saint Simon. So he believes in something called positivism. He says that the government, through scientific method, was capable of solving the world's social problems. The government can solve the world's social problems. Is he going to like Adam Smith? St. Simon says government can solve all the problems of the world. Is that what Adam Smith says? Adam Smith says government usually just gets in the way and gets it wrong. Again, Adam Smith would say, look at California during the pandemic. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to school. The economy is suffering. Government got in the way. St. Simon says, actually, government can solve the world's problems. What's a problem that people say is going to end the world unless we do something about it in the next? Global warming, right? So if that's a problem, today, Joe Biden believes the government can solve that problem. For example, what does he want to eliminate by 2050 that all of your parents own, probably own? Yeah. A gas-run car. Because gas cars cause emissions, and emissions cause global warming. There are those who believe government has the power to stop global warming. They should have the power to say, Shelby cannot own a car that runs on gas.
Yeah, but then we get Teslas. Yeah, but then
Those are
they're
expensive.
Okay, but if you think about it, gas cars at one point were expensive, but then they became so popular since we adapted and found ways to build them cheaper and they were more cost efficient and fuel efficient. And the same thing is just gonna happen with electric cars. It's gonna take a while, yeah, but we've already been through the process before. Might as well do it again.
Well, so Adam Smith would probably say, if there's no need, now if you want an electric car, that's fine. You build electric cars, you do you. But for the government to force everyone to, that's a problem, Adam Smith would say.
But you can't do that in America. It's just gonna have to be.
You can do that. You can outlaw these and you can phase it out. You can say, we're not going to have any more oil and gas. You can make laws if you want. You can do that. And St. Simon said government should. Government should be more powerful because government can solve the problems we have. Adam Smith would say, I don't know about you, but our congressmen are not the most intelligent people on the planet. I don't want my government having more power. I actually want them to have less power because they're literally terrible at their job. I mean, have you ever lived in a time where people say, man, our Congress is the best Congress ever, whether Republican or Democrats? No. Adam Smith would say, yeah, I'm going to say no to more powerful government. St. Simon said, no, we can solve the world's problems if we only had a stronger government. It says on the handout, this philosophy was very influential in Latin America, where governments tried to use harsh policies to bring about what they perceived to be order and progress. You'll write down order and progress on the next line. And we saw the same thing in China. I would say probably holding a woman down and forcing her to have an abortion In China, they're not doing that because they're like, hey, let's just be a mean jerk. They're like, the problem's poverty. I am doing that woman a favor. By me forcing her to have an abortion, I'm helping all of China to be wealthier. So none of these people are saying, let's do this to be jerks. It's actually for a greater good that would force a woman to have an abortion. It's a greater good that I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. Another guy you should know is Charles Fourier. And he believes in something called Utopian Socialism. He also is the man that we credit for actually even coming up with the word feminism. And he says on your handout that trade, he considered it to be the source of all evil. He thought trade was the source of all evil. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, it says on your handout that capitalism is often hated by intellectuals. Capitalism is often hated by intellectuals. Intellectuals are like smart people that are educated, typically rich. In fact, if you look at all these people, look how they're dressed. Do they look like they're wealthy? Look at Fourier, how he's dressed. Look at St. Simon, how he's dressed. Look at Mathis, how he's dressed. Do they seem wealthy? They are. And intellectuals often hate capitalism. Why? They thought merchants or business people were, you'll write down, uneducated. They looked down upon business people because business people were not born rich. In fact, there's a word we studied called the bourgeoisie. They were not born rich. How did they become rich in the 1800s? They did what? They worked their way to their wealth. A lot of these guys are intellectuals who were born wealthy, raised wealthy, die wealthy. And business people aren't always like that. I'm going to list a few business people. Based on your perception, do you think, oh, that's an intellectual? That guy, I'm sure he's reading books all the time. Donald J. Trump, intellectual?
I mean, he was born into that.
No, not an intellectual. No one thinks, oh, man, I wonder what book he's reading. But he's a billionaire. Give you another business person, George W. Bush. He was president of the United States. If you spend any time on YouTube on George Bush talking, it's like comedy hour because it's like ridiculous. And he often had the perception he's stupid. But before he was a politician, he was a businessman who made millions of dollars. I'll give you another name. Just the name alone, does this sound like an intellectual? Herbert E. Butts.
Oh, that's HEB.
Does that sound like, oh, I'm sure that guy's an intellectual powerhouse. He's probably reading Shakespeare and Aristotle. No, but he's a billionaire because of HEB. Or the Cathy family, the family that started Chick-fil-A. Not an intellectual. A guy from Georgia who knows how to make chicken sandwiches and is a billionaire. These intellectuals often thought business people were trash. It says they thought merchants were uneducated. Number two, they were concerned that merchants were more important. They were concerned that these merchants, these business people were more important. Intellectuals thought they should, we'll write down, limit merchants. I don't want anyone to be more important than me. So we might want to look at limiting these brand new people who were not born rich. They became rich. They're not educated. They didn't go to the right schools. We want to look at them, at limiting them. Why would I want to limit them? Number one reason why is that they fear capitalism was not fair. Capitalism is not fair. Why should some people be millionaires and billionaires? That's not fair. You know what we should probably do to the wealthy with all that money they don't need? We might want to take some of that money from them and give it to what kinds of people? The poor. They thought capitalism's not fair, and intellectuals will rescue society from merchants. Business people are bad. We need someone to save us. There's a very popular politician, you may know her name. Her name is AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She actually says that it is wrong to be a billionaire, that no one on earth should be a billionaire. And we might need to look at taxing them to take money from them to give it to the poor. She's an intellectual. She went to Boston College or Boston University, I forget which one. She will save us from from the evil business people running Amazon and YouTube. They're billionaires. No one should ever be a billionaire. They, the intellectuals, will rescue us. We're going to stop right here. We will continue to talk about these trends on the next time we meet.